Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reboot Your Brain podcast. I am Dr. Amelia Scott Barrett. I am a headache neurologist, and I am so excited about our guest today. We are talking to Dr. Trupti Gokani, who is also a neurologist and headache specialist. And she has a very unique skill set. She brings Ayurveda and NLP into her work in helping change people's lives. Dr. Gokani, tell me a little bit about how you acquired such an unusual and interesting skill set.
So thank you so much for having me. And I think for me and for many of us, our journey is based on our own personal stories and experiences. And what happened was early in my career training, my first year of medical school, actually, I started struggling with insomnia. And after about a month of not sleeping at all, I was a little bit of a zombie at that time. I thought, okay, I gotta go see somebody. So I went to see, traditional Western practitioner, family practice doctor who said, there's nothing wrong with you. Your labs are fine. Your exam is fine. There's nothing wrong with you. I thought, but there is something wrong with me. I can't sleep. And so then I went to see a therapist. I'd never seen a therapist before. I was open to it. And the therapist asked me a really fundamental, important question. She said, are you feeling stressed? And I remember saying no. And when I think back to that early version of me in my early 20s, the reason I said no was because I don't think I even knew what stress was. You know, I was living a certain way, I was living a certain lifestyle. I was a first year medical student. I thought everything was fine. I was doing well in school. I had a nice family, had a nice boyfriend at that time. Everything was going well. So I did not think I was stressed. And only after another month of struggling, I went to see a psychiatrist. I was getting really desperate. And I thought the psychiatrist is going to have the answer, right? And the psychiatrist, within 10 minutes and about 8 questions, asked me the classic SIGI kind of mnemonic, which is a depression screen. I didn't know at the time. Are you feeling sad? Do you have insomnia? Do you have guilt? Do you have low energy? I said yes to 6 of the 8 of the questions. And within about 10 minutes, he said, you have major depression. Here's Prozac. And this is the first time in my entire life at that point in time where I had actually gotten a diagnosis and gotten a prescription. And I got back to my car and I sat down with the prescription in hand and I said, this is not me. I am not someone with major depression. I do not want to take a prescription. And I ripped up the prescription and then I headed to the bookstores and I went to the self help section and I found this incredible vast array of books, from Bernie Siegel to Andrew Weil to Deepak Chopra, looking at the mind, body, and spirit. So within that early time period, I started to look into Ayurveda, and that's slowly how I entered that world. And what happened was, as I started reading and reading, I started applying the techniques for myself, specifically the Ayurvedic techniques. And within a couple of months, I was sleeping again, medication free. And I'm in my 50s now, and I have not taken any medications, and my moods are great. And so it's just fascinating to kind of have had that experience myself because it gives me confidence to know that these methods do work.
So, you are a perfect example of physician heal thyself.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
you and I share a similar path to coming to this work. I don't do full on Ayurveda in my work, but I find the doshas to be an incredibly useful way to help people understand what's going on with their body and what type of yoga is going to be most effective for them. And so for me, I started doing yoga in my early 30s as a treatment for anxiety. I had had a
Mhm.
child and I was overwhelmed and excited and loved every minute of it, but there was just so much anxiety too, worrying that
Yeah.
I would do something wrong. And
Mhm.
as I learned these tools, I noticed that my headaches had started getting better. And it just wasn't in my wheelhouse to think, okay, headaches are something that you can actually get better from, recover from. I mean, you and I were both trained in the tradition that says, this is your genetics, here's
Mhm.
your pills, go live with it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
100%.
So
Yeah.
then you had the experience of seeing how Ayurveda could help you in your own life. Can you tell us a little bit about how this has helped the lives of people in your practice?
Yes, I'd love to. And it's just incredible, to see individuals who come into the practice, come into my coaching calls, and who believe that they're not going to get better, and they feel like they've tried everything. And they really haven't. You know, you and I both know there's so many things that don't happen in the traditional medical office simply because we weren't trained, in that way. And I remember one of my earliest experiences with this young boy, we'll call him Kyle. And I talk about him in the Mysterious Mind book, the first book I wrote about 5 years ago. And he came in with his mom. Actually, his mom has messaged me before, and she wanted to talk to me before she brought him in for the visit. And she's like, I'm just going to let you know, we've done it all. We've done everything. We've seen many neurologists, we've seen ENTs, we've seen surgeons, we've seen physical medicine and rehab doctors. We've done acupuncture. We've done, all these different treatments. And my son is really struggling. I'm not sure you can help him. So long story short, he comes in and he has these different features of this, what we'll call like an Alice in Wonderland type syndrome. He's having, this, the first feature is seeing heads getting bigger and smaller, heads getting bigger and smaller. And then another feature was like seeing like almost like if you look at the walls, like crinkled, like we're getting to the holidays. So as if you have wrapping paper that's all crinkled up, all the walls were looking like that. And then this vortex kind of depth perception, strange thing. All three of these features were going on. And it'd been going on for a long time, over a year, I think it was a couple of years. And this little young boy, who, by the way, same age as my son. So as a mother, I felt this incredible connection with this mom, saying my son is experiencing this. And so he came to the office, he's sitting down, looking down at the floor, because if he looked at me, he'd see my head getting bigger and smaller. And we first kind of do the diagnosis like I did for myself with the insomnia, on which state is out of alignment. And then, like you said earlier, you use things like yoga poses, breath techniques, herbals. I put him on a specific kind of combination of herbals, got him to do a certain kind of breath technique, had him take away things that would push him. It was like playing a certain sport. I said, stop playing that sport for a while. He was unhappy with me, but I'm like, I promise you, if you want to get better, you have to follow this. And it was unbelievable as he followed these approaches. It didn't happen overnight, but the first visit he came back and he said, you know what? I feel more calm. And then after, a short period of time, the entire thing stopped. And it was in a car ride home. They were coming back from college, and he was sitting in the back seat, and mom's driving, and then he had gone fallen asleep, and then he opened his eyes up and he's like, oh my God, it stopped, mom. And she almost pulled off the road because she's like, no way. And she's like, oh gosh, I hope this lasts. And by the next day, it had stopped. So it was a really incredible story, but it goes to show that I think you tried everything. You really haven't. You really
Yeah.
haven't.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a really dramatic example of how powerful these tools can be. And another important piece of healing I find in so many people is what has been called adrenal fatigue, this concept that we sort of wear our bodies down. And I think you were talking about that a little bit when you were talking about your own past and the things that you had to fix with the tools of Ayurveda. Can you talk a little bit more about this adrenal fatigue idea, or how we think of it these days?
So the initial thought on adrenal fatigue was that the idea was that we push ourselves out of alignment. So go back to me, because you just talk about me, you know, in medical school, moving, going, doing too much, get too excitable, skipping meals, getting to bed late, just not honoring the circadian rhythm at all. And doesn't help that I was doing kickboxing and drinking coffee all day. So I basically got super disconnected with me. My cortisol rhythm was way out of whack. So what happened was my system got to a certain point. I was like, I can't handle this. So I started to then experience this high cortisol all day, and no surprise, couldn't fall asleep at night. My brain didn't even know how to turn off. So eventually, the adrenals, because they're pumping out cortisol, they're trying to keep up. They just can't. And then the adrenals kind of drop out, and you have what we call adrenal fatigue. You start to feel exhausted and tired and brain fog, and all these symptoms, changes in menstrual cycles. All these things happen for women. But what's really happening, and I think as a neurologist, this is really interesting and important to share, is that it's not necessarily the adrenals that are the problem. It's actually the brain that is really where the issue is, meaning that the brain is telling the adrenals and trying to signal to the adrenals to turn off by giving our body symptoms. And this is where you and I that do yoga understand this. We start to get imbalances in the physical body, a little bit of neck tightness, maybe some headache, pain. We start to feel a little disconnected. We're a little bit more short tempered, a little bit more anxious. So our physiology, mind, body, spirit starts to shift. And in Ayurveda, the mind and the body are one. So whether you're having anxiety or neck pain or constipation, doesn't matter. It's an imbalance of your state. And that starts happening. It's your body telling you you're in danger. So slow it down a little bit. Sit down and have lunch. Get to bed on time. Start to work on your breath. Take away people and things in life that are creating problems. Maybe take a little break from your phone, as we'll say now. But do these things to get out of state, right? And then your body won't go into this drop out of adrenals. But what happens is the brain is signaling and trying to tell the system by giving us these symptoms. But when we don't listen, because we're this human being that we think we can push past everything, then the brain disconnects. The hypothalamus actually disconnects with the adrenals. And then the new terminology is really a mouthful. Hypothalamic pituitary adrenal maladaptation syndrome. Basically, there's just a disconnect between the hypothalamus and the adrenals, and there's a complete dropout of the adrenals. And it's not that the adrenals have really a problem. It's the brain has stopped signaling. It's like, I compare it to being a parent. It's just easy as a parent to make these, create these analogies. So if I tell, my daughter to clean her room and she doesn't clean her room, I ask her to clean her room and she doesn't clean her room. So it's like our body's saying, I'm giving you neck pain. I'm giving you anxiety. I'm going to give you signals. I'm going to tell you to do something. But if you're not doing it, the room is going to get messier and messier. I'm going to get more neck pain, more anxiety. Then you know what? At some point, mom is going to back out. Dad's going to back and say, do it, fine. Let the room be. It's like the hypothalamus is telling the adrenals, and I'm telling the body, I'm giving you signals. You're not going to listen. Then the hypothalamus to the brain takes the backseat. The adrenals drop out. The room's a disaster. Kids on auto-regulation. Daughter has to figure it out herself. Well, that's it. And if you're ready to come back to me and ask me, I will give you some guidance. But if not, I'm going to let you do it yourself. And unfortunately, as you can imagine, that doesn't lead to great outcomes unless there's a reconnection between the hypothalamus and adrenals. Does that make sense, that whole story? I try to put a little analogy to help it.
Yeah, it does. And I love the parenting analogy about you're trying to tell your kid to do something and they just don't. So, that would be the hypothalamus and pituitary telling
Yep.
the adrenals to secrete more cortisol,
Yep.
right? Okay, got it.
So what I'm trying to do is say what stress is as a disconnect from self. It's you getting too vata, too pitta, too kapha. You may not even know it because that's your world you're living in. Yet your body is screaming and trying to tell you. And unfortunately, we're too busy in our heads that we don't see it. And then what happens is that the body eventually crashes. We have this, unfortunately, manifestation of disease or symptoms that occur. We go to the Western doctor. Doctor's like, I don't know, we take a pill. But that's where I'm trying to do my best by teaching this ancient model, but kind of making it a little bit more Western, easy to approach. So that's the idea, is that the adrenals are trying to keep up with us, but they can't.
Yeah.
I really tell everyone, don't believe you've done it all. Let yourself embrace these other ideas. Be open and try to not let the internet guide you, because unfortunately, you can go down a rabbit hole. And I've had people come in with bags of supplements, watching all these podcasts, and listening to these podcasts, watching all these videos, which is great. Get educated. I'm all about being educated. But be careful about taking this journey without guidance.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah. And so I'm so glad you're writing this book to bring more attention to these tools. And I think you make a really good point. Yes, use podcasts and the internet for education, but don't be your own doctor. Please draw on the experience of those who have treated thousands of patients and have the expertise to really get you where you want to go as fast as possible.
Meditation, incredible. And like you said, I'm so glad you brought this up. It has to be done the right way. So many people I know have given up on meditation because they're not doing it the right way.
I see that all the time. Yeah, and they're missing out on an incredible therapeutic tool that is substantiated by thousands of studies, functional MRI. We know what's going wrong in the brains of people with chronic migraine, and we know what meditation styles are likely to fix that. So that's one piece of the puzzle. And then we also know how to shift the nervous system from this chronic fight or flight that accompanies migraine. I mean, it's hard to power through your day with a headache. It's exhausting for your body. It shifts your body into this chronic fight or flight by default. And we have incredible tools from the biohacking world that tell us how to watch our body shift into parasympathetic, which is where healing happens. We're used to
Right.
thinking, oh, this is beyond my control. This is just what my body does. So not true. There are multiple places where we can intervene. So I like that framework of
Mhm.
all the different places where we can intervene actually
Yeah.
with effective tools that change people's lives. It changes people's lives.
It's
So
empowering. Isn't it empowering? I think once, because you and I have discovered that for ourselves, right? And so I just
yeah.
want to give people positivity. We kind of earlier said people coming in without hope and feeling like there's nothing else to do. And I think once you start to learn these tools and once you start to use them for yourself, it's so empowering. It's so incredibly empowering to have them because you basically become your own guide, right?
Found it to be incredibly empowering to know, okay, well, I know exactly what I need to do. There's 3 or 4 different poses I need right
Mhm.
now. I'll just go get up, grab my mat,
Mhm.
do those things. I'll be able to go
Yeah.
back to sleep. Everything will be okay. And that's what's empowering about it for me is feeling like
Yeah.
I'm not dependent on a pill. I'm not dependent on any kind of treatment or provider or anything outside myself. It's about figuring out how the body heals itself and how do you nudge that along? How do you push
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
healing along so that your body can be as healthy as possible? And it's available to all of us. It's available to all of us. And thank you so much for being here today. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed our conversation. I feel like you're a kindred spirit, and it's been absolutely wonderful to learn a little bit more about how you help people and what your journey has been, and all the tools that are available that you use to help people. So, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me and thank you for being a kindred spirit with me and sharing this message because I just feel like we can really help so many people and give them what's been missing in the doctor's office.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about. All right.
Mhm.
Okay. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Reboot Your Brain podcast. We'll see you next time.